Hello everyone. Let's continue with our sustainability efforts in supply management. We have seen the perspective of sustainability, how why sustainability is important. We have seen different perspectives of sustainability, how it is important from supply chain point of view, and also what are the different strategy, what are the different dimensions of sustainability: environmental, social, ethical and economical. So, and how companies have, put an effort, to achieve social sustainability or environment sustainability. Now we will move forward uh, to address sustainability in supply management. Now we understand what is sustainability, but how one can ensure that the products which I'm going to buy as a buyer, they are sustainable. The moment we say sustainable, it would cover the environment, social also predominantly, right? So one must ask this question as a buyer: how to design products and services in more sustainable manner? How can supply management raise questions about sustainable practices in an organization? How can the purchasing be done from the suppliers committed to sustainable practices? How can the suppliers be evaluated and re-evaluated for the sustainable practices? So we would keep on asking these questions, like this curious question to achieve the sustainability, right? So by first understanding supplier sustainability, right? So this is a purchasing strategy that ensures supplier meets specific environmental, social and economic standards. In the last session, we have seen that how if one mistake or one defect, like which passes on to the assembly, and then it again passes on to the customer, and later on it can result in any disastrous situation. In the past, things have resulted in human loss also, right? So you can see that how this can affect, no doubt reputational risk, but there is a no bigger risk than human loss, right? So it has become imperative now that all supply chain entities be conscious enough, and it is not about the immediate supplier from where we are buying the products or services. It has to go, the supplier's supplier, and so on. The sustainability aspect should be uh, uh, must go from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers as well. Correct. So when it comes to supplier sustainability, one has to ensure the supplier meets all sustainability dimensions, right? This is about choosing supplier that use sustainable practices in their operation, right? And and treating their employees fairly, right? So by now we all know that when we talk about environment sustainability, what we are meant to do, and when it is social sustainability, what we are expected to do. Now, how one can ensure sustainability in purchasing, right? So uh, we can follow this 4-step approach, right? So first we need to set expectations and targets, like what supplier practices are, what are the, can we establish some standards so that supplier be aware of that, this is what is expected from me. Once this is done, then one can select the supplier, right? We can measure after the supplier selection. That selection can also be based on the sustainability efforts or readiness to adopt sustainability, and then how to measure the sustainability of the supplier. So step 3 is, we are measuring, we are monitoring also, right? And if need, we can develop, right? How supplier development can occur so that supplier can be comply with the set metrics. So this is more of a supplier compliance, even if it is driven by monitoring and developing the supplier. The last one, which prevails in almost every certification or every standard, is the continuous improvement. This is very important, right? Because if this intention is will be there, then only we will keep devising new strategies and set new targets, right? So when we say set expectation and targets, how one can see that, right? So as we have said, we would predominantly talk about environmental and social, right? So before setting the expectations from supplier, the best thing is the organization first have a they should first focus on their own business strategy, right? What is their corporate strategy, what they want to achieve, because sustainability is also a part of corporate strategy. So how a company perceives that sustainability in their organization, right? Because from there only the goals of that organization would come, and those goals can govern the standards set for suppliers code of conduct. So this is what, yes, so whatever we are expecting from the supplier, it can result in the form of suppliers code of conduct. Okay, so why why it is it's percolating from the organization strategy? Because if the buyer company or the buyer company, it belongs to an industry which is more of a environment dominate, right? What do we mean by environment dominate? Means the company, the buyer is using either sensitive resources or which creates significant by the products. So sensitive resources or creates harmful output, or maybe the health hazard products, if they are not uh, packed in a safe manner, or the if they are not stored very well, right? So this can lead to risky situations, right, later. So in that way, obviously, if the buyer or industry buyer belongs to a industry or company belongs to industry which is environment dominate, right, definitely the code of conduct would be very different. It will be more focused on like uh, how the resources which are, because of sensitive, it can be hazardous. So there can be a code of conduct focusing more on how to use them, how to pack them, how to store them, right, and then how to transport them in a very safe manner. Okay. However, if it is a social sustainability dominant, where the labor issues can be more salient, there the code of conduct would be very different, right? How they treat their employees, in the past, there are plenty of examples where companies have uh, violated the social sustainability norms, right? For example, in the past, Apple, a company like Apple was procuring from the suppliers without knowing what suppliers are doing. They were having child labor in their premises, which sometimes buyer is completely unaware. But when these practices were surfaced by some issues, or when the safety norms were compromised in the supplier premises, then only such issues become surfaced to the buying organization. Oh, this might also go wrong, or these are the practices our suppliers are doing, right? So then it becomes a shock and definitely a big reputational loss. So that's why this is very important that if the buyer or the purchasing organization is dealing with the sector or product or service which is a social sustainability dominant, more labor oriented, in that case the code of conduct has to be written accordingly, right? It should not be, there shouldn't be child labor. It's a fair treatment to the employees, safe and healthy conditions, environment should be given to the employees. So given this broad setting, one can set the standards considering industry specific, identify the relevant issues of industry. One can seek help of experts on different issues of standards development, right? Now one can engage suppliers also in the process, because the product which we are buying from the suppliers are expert in that product, right? So one can engage the suppliers. So any location specific issues for the suppliers, or are any new issues cropping up for those suppliers, right? So how relevant are those issues to the buyer company, right? So for example, in the past, especially in food industry, right, the after the finished product is produced, right, then after random checking, it has been found that sometimes some lead content would be there. One can see that the processing industry has no role in that, because the raw material probably, like the maybe raw material can be in any form of, like some cream or this thing, or it can be any meal raw material, meal based raw material, which is supplied by the supplier. Even that supplier might not be aware of that. But the issue could have been the water, the locality in which supplier plant is located, the water itself is contaminated or has particularly more lead, for example. Like, so many a times, even supply chain entities are completely unaware. This can be a location specific issue, right? So this issues need to be resolved and should be captured in the set standards. So if one can have, if it is a food product, one can have tests at very early stage, so that no contamination happens at each stage. So this is the set standards. First, invite experts, take experts help, and set the standards, and how relevant are those issues to buyer company, so that we can utilize the time and energy judiciously, what is relevant to the buying organization. This is the step 1. Now step 2 is, like given this broad setting, like how we would set the target, right? So set sustainability targets for supplier, and then collect information on the set targets. Okay, so we have to set measurements and metrics. Okay, so if we can say that the supplier should go for certification, right? Because if certification requirements are satisfied, that would automatically means that the supplier is compliant with those clauses, or the set targets by the buying organization. Okay, or it can be some other measures, right? So it can be like for example, we can set target that supplier company should not emit the carbon dioxide, or the carbon emission should be limited to that, right? So so such can be, or the water consumption, energy consumption should be restricted to this much only. So this kind of targets one can set, as I've mentioned in step 1, according to the dominance which is there for that company. So collect information on the set targets, perform suppliers operational reviews to assess their current practices, right? So review, keep reviewing, like what are their practices, then prioritize the measurement and metrics, and so that you can categorize the suppliers in step 3, right? So what are the performance indicators, right, which will help in measurements and metrics. And in these days, information systems such as EMS, environmental management system, is very handy when it comes to gathering of information related to environment sustainability and evaluating that. So existing standards or create own standards for the suppliers. So to measurement, to devise a measurement scheme, either one can use the existing standards, or one can create their own standards. Like for companies, like when we go for food, right, for the food industry, right, we can have a specified industry based standards, or if they are common standards, like international standards of ISO 14000 for environment across sectors, or ISO 26000 guidelines across sectors. So one can go for different this thing. The idea is, in step 2, like you have now you have got to know the expectations to be set. So accordingly, what kind of measurement schemes one can devise in step 2, right? So we can go for international standards, ISO 14000. This is basically like, cover the environmental management system requirements, and 14004, which covers the guidelines. So this is supplier should identify and control environmental impact of their activities, products and services. Now, how to determine that impact, one can see, and continually improve environmental performance, implement system to set environmental targets as I've already mentioned, achieve them and demonstrate successes, right? Now, if this international standard of ISO 14000, if some supplier is already have this certification, then it itself is a testimony of, like, their efforts in environmental sustainability. So in step 2, the purchasing organization can go through this EMS of suppliers to ensure that, so this environment sustainability effort is in place. Similar thing one can use for social sustainability. ISO 26000, they provide the guidelines like social responsibility subjects, human rights, right, labor practices. This also talks about environment. Is this environment is good, well lit, hygiene, fair operating practices, excuse me, consumer issues, the product which we are producing, it should be consumable in a safe manner, community involvement and development guidelines, explanation of issues, how to apply principles into practice, best practices, voluntary initiatives, right? So these are all the guidelines of social sustainability, right? Social sustainability, like, we have seen in the past many a times, the health and safety has been compromised, right? So very popular case, it reminds the popular case of, like, in Chinese baby milk formula was contaminated by some unwanted material which was put the baby's health at risk. Similarly, this aspect of, safety is very, very important when it comes to social sustainability. So this is just one example of how one can have international standards, right, which can be a very good measure for buyer to ensure the sustainability efforts of suppliers. There can be industry specific standards also, right? So but mostly industry specific certifications, definitely in one sense it is good because they are product specific standards or they are industry specific certification. For example, for auto sector overall, for environment and for social, it can be good to have ISO standards. But there is one more, IATF 16949 standards are there, right, which along with ISO standards, they actually deals with specific customer requirements, right? It can be very technical, but it caters to these specific customer requirements. Okay, so similarly, the certifications, like, if they help buyers to ensure the aspect of product services, right, definitely align with the value. That's why, the it is more of a buyer oriented certifications, right? Or, there can be, for example, for food we have HACCP kind of, for the specific control, and and GMP for the health and hazard risks, for the food products, right? So this can be industry specific uh, standards one can have, right, on top of the international standards or maybe as a standalone standards. So these are the other uh, indicators, you can say, or the used as measures to ensure that the sustainability efforts are in place by the suppliers, right? So there is only one challenge, is that, uh, sometimes, we see if it is some industry specific standards or measures, like measures which suppliers are claiming that they have been adopting, that it is difficult to measure it, or it is difficult to be like to realize that by quantifying or by testing it, right? For example, it may not be readily transparent, right? I'll again take example of food. When we eat food, it is very difficult to tell whether this is a genetic modified or conventional food, or it is an organic food, right? So even if supplier is putting effort in making it organic, so it is very difficult to have indicators, the which can help us in uh, which can help a buyer to ensure that they comply with certainly the organic nature of food. So such attributes are called credence attributes, so where content and process attributes that are difficult for the purchaser to perceive through observation. Okay, so the indicators can be the price premiums, like if the price is high, then it might ensure that this product is organic, or the trust. But still, these are the few challenges, it's there, in some of dealing with some of the products. But this can also be overcome with the technology which we are using, right? So we can have some kind of distributed technology, or some kind of online time stamped ledgers, like shared across supply chain entities like blockchain, that can come to that can solve these problems. But the cost of such technologies are so huge that the supply chain entities are still like figuring out if will it be a valuable proposition to have such high cost technology given the margins of this food products. So this is about what is available for the entities to measure the suppliers sustainability efforts in terms of international certifications or industry specific certifications, right? As per step 2. So one other aspect of credence attributes how one can check is maybe transmitted via labeling or website or another information source, right? One can write everything about the product ingredients, and other information. It can be first party claim, like issued by industry group, you know for example, I've said auto industry can come forward and say that this kind of customer specific products should follow IATF, this thing, right? Like I can say, because we are floating this program as a management, like so in academic system also, in education sector, right? So companies, when they want to hire the students, the management graduates, they would like to see whether those colleges are accredited to good business accreditation certifications like AACSB or AMBA. So these are the first party claim, which is like industry groups can come forward. It can be second party claim, a purchasing entity certifies that a producer has met certain set of guidelines. And it can be third party claim, rather than second party. A third party can be independent party with no vested interest in the outcomes, which is more fair. It's a kind of audit like done by in most fair manner, like that producer has met certain standards. So this is the idea, certifiers are public or private organization, right, which can help in us accessing, evaluating and verifying safety, quality processes, right, and other claims like which are set of standards. So the idea here is that one can use international certification, industry specific certification, and within that we can have first party, second party, third party claims, which might help in assuring that the products are meeting certain standards. So after this thing one can measure it, right, and report it, right? So just this for one more examples, like Energy Stars as electronics appliances, right? Now it comes like, we know now how to set the standards, set the targets, they should meet that, right? Now the third step is, according to what standards we have set, how to measure it. If it is EMS, like, how supplier has done as per EMS, can we get the reports, can we measure, can we analyze it, right? So all those things happens in step 3, create supplier management system. Supplier measurement system we have developed. Now in this step we would measure it as per the evolving system, and we would evaluate, right, how suppliers have been doing. So the other important step is like, when you onboard a new supplier, or the supplier has just started supply initiative, right? So in that case, we can help in developing the suppliers, right? Or otherwise also we can provide some services like help and support suppliers to meet sustainability targets. So various development programs can be developed, so that, along with the measurement, like, we would come to know which suppliers need help, support, which suppliers are new, or at the same time we can find out which suppliers are not performing as per the set standards. Supplier management system, we do a periodic system of recording process. It's a systematic way of recording the measurement process, incidents of non-compliance, and how to come up with remedies, of that. So like, probationary, then for example the new suppliers, how to prepare plans to address their issues, clear plan to deal with non-compliant suppliers, right? At the same time, the suppliers who are doing very well, one can have, supplier recognition and reward program, right? So supplier development can be done, in various forms by imparting training programs, right? For example, there can be training programs on how to reduce the waste, how to improve quality, right? How to encourage suppliers to keep looking for sustainable material to be used, right? So focus on supplier base, small supplier base of strategic importance, right? It is difficult to like develop all suppliers, so the effort can be on small set of suppliers, but choose the suppliers which are of your strategic importance, right? This is very important, right? Suppliers, if suppliers are given right incentives to participate in sustainability development efforts or programs, the suppliers would really put, serious efforts. So how buyers can support development program, which team members will impart training, whether buyer organizations are ready to share some resources to help suppliers, right? So where the programs can be held, So this aspect should be covered as a step 3, where measurement, evaluation and development happens. So this can be done in the sustainability efforts, right? The right incentives can be given to the supplier. For example, the top performer or supplier can be awarded bigger contract, or maybe continuous order, continuous order for some more longer duration can be given, or some award can be given to the supplier. So these days, many companies, they recognize their suppliers efforts in their websites, or they run conferences, to acknowledge, the efforts of suppliers. So these are the ways where we can provide some incentives, in the supplier development thing. And the last but not the least is evaluate and improve, right? Periodic evaluation of supplier, full supplier base and program, analyze comprehensive supplier performance data, because it is very important for continuous improvement. Use key performance indicator and consolidate into a report. Present clearly top performers and the non-compliant suppliers, right? This is very important. That is only possible if you have complete analysis. Get the data audited by in-house or third party. Like, it is actually fair, if it is audited by third party, so that, a fair opportunity be given to all the suppliers evaluation report, and it will result in more transparency and legitimacy of evaluation process. Now these are the very important aspects, 4-step approach, like because we all be wondering, like sustainability is right, but how one can ensure the sustainability from the supply management perspective, how one can implement and ensure that the supplier with whom I'm dealing with is environmentally sustainable, socially sustainable. So one can use this 4-step approach, right? There's a small story, I want to discuss that. This is about Walmart organic clothing. There was end customers demand for organic clothing at Walmart store, but Walmart would not be able to maintain continuity of supply of organic clothes. Like, you can guess it, right? Because at times it would be costly to buy organic clothing, and also there were issues on legitimacy of organic claims. Correct? I've told you, like, it is even, given all these 4-step approach, it won't be easy, to measure the sustainability because of different sectors, and different indicators. Now, this is the Walmart concern. Correct. So they revisited the contracts and the way of transaction with the suppliers, that is farmers, because farmers, like, who were supplying the cotton, right? This is organic clothing. So farmers were offered long-term contracts, you see incentive. So with high volume purchasing commitments, right? See, now they are offering incentive to the supplier, which are the farmers. They were given an incentive of long-term contracts with high volume purchasing commitments. So farmers were encouraged to produce organic cotton in large volumes, right? The moment we will have long-term contract and high volume purchasing commitments are there, the supplier would definitely put their effort in producing large volumes. So the moment they would produce large volume in bulk, one can achieve economies of scale, and when economies of scale are there, the cost would come down. So this adoption of global organic textile standards. So it's not that, because you see the legitimacy here, even after doing all these efforts jointly by Walmart and their supplier, there is still an issue. How the end consumer will ensure that, this is an organic cloth which I'm going to wear or I'm going to buy. So they adopted global organic textile standards for organic cotton, that is highly regarded as third party certification standard. Now, when this third party certification standard will come to picture, it will act like a assurance of, the assurance of, like, whatever is claimed by Walmart and their suppliers is actually true, right? So this is how one can try to implement whatever we have said today in this session, right? So set the target and have the measurement scheme in place, right? Give reward, award, incentive to the suppliers to implement, the sustainability, and have some assurance, third party legitimacy, so that this is acceptable certifications in industry, right? And then evaluate and continuously improve, like, keep innovating new strategies, new solutions for new solutions of being sustainable in environmental and social manner, so that we can achieve a sustainable supply chain, right? Which is not only flow of information, resources and forward, but flow of information, return product, reverse exchanges of products and services, monitoring and collaborating sustainability should be our aspect, right? So supply chain interfaces, including the supporting activities, logistics, banks, others, assessing, reporting and maintaining sustainability should be the overall picture. One should have clear and coherent definition of sustainability understood by all supply chain entities, and incentives considering all three aspects of sustainability. So one can, the more ambitious statement would be to eventually find some standard measure or index of sustainable supply chains, right, which is very challenging, right, but one can either come up with sub standards industry wise. So this is all about, the sustainable supply, starting from the lens of sustainable supply chain, but focus on how to make your supplier sustainable. Right. Thank you.